Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. Happy 4th of July to America. Today is the 250th birthday of the United States. Yes, it was 4th of July 1776 that Congress officially, formally adopted the Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. And the Declaration of Independence, the document itself, which was authored by Thomas Jefferson, 200 copies were printed by the Philadelphia uh, uh, printer John Dunlap, and those 200 copies are called the Dunlap broadsides, and they were officially published on that day in the evening of 4th of July 1776. Now, a grievance that featured prominently in the declaration authored by Thomas Jefferson was an allusion to the corruption of the courts. Thomas Jefferson did state that the king had obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to by refusing to assent to laws establishing judiciary powers. Another grievance stated that the courts, the judiciary depended entirely on the will of the king, on his will alone, and their tenure of office and their salaries, and that the courts were nothing but instituted mock trials, with respect to soldiers who killed and abused the citizens of the colonies. So, of course, my point is the impartiality of the courts, right? The lack of impartiality of the courts that administered fairness and equity and justice. Clearly, there was no rule of law. It was the rule of the king, since judiciary depended entirely on the will of the king. So this was a main grievance, one of the main reasons why our founding fathers declared independence from Great Britain. Now, 250 years after, are the courts completely impartial? I've done videos talking about the public corruption of Maryland's Judge James Bonifant, and just to show that it's not my complaint against Judge James Bonifant, whom I referred to the Maryland Judicial Commission on Judicial Disabilities. My case is not isolated, and I'm going to cite the instance of a Maryland judge who turned out to be a Nigerian American. I suppose she's the first Nigerian American to become a judge in Maryland. I don't know. I'm not sure, but her name's April Ademiluyi, Judge April Ademiluyi. That's former Judge April Ademiluyi. She was removed as a judge in 2024, and I've studied her. I've read the reports on her. Frankly, regarding her claims and allegations, I don't think she received enough national media attention because she's made concerning allegations, allegations that that impugn on the integrity of the courts, at least the Maryland judiciary. So she was removed as a judge in 2024, and she alleges that the reason she was removed was a form of an instance of retaliation, because she had reported a judge, a colleague of hers, to the Maryland Commission on Judicial Disabilities for having changed an order, one of her orders, right, regarding her court case. That's Judge Ademiluyi's, without her consent. and I think this judge, was forced to retire or something, and there was sort of a ganging up against her. She alleges several things. She also alleged that she had participated in, um, she had cooperated with federal agents with respect to an investigation of the corruption of Maryland's judges, the bribing of Maryland's judges in facilitating, the pipeline, the youth pipeline to prison in Maryland. Now, I've done videos talking about Maryland's abysmal incarceration system. Maryland has the worst incarceration rate for black men in America, the highest in America. Uh, blacks constitute just 31% of the general population of Maryland, but they make up 71% of its prison population. And of course, amongst the youth, called emerging adults, that's people from 18 to 24, um, blacks make up 80% of people serving more than 10 years for sentences, for people, between the ages of 18, uh, and 24, right? People who were first sentenced, as emerging youth. That's from between the ages of 18 to 24. Black youth, black men make up 80% of them, right? That's a disproportionate amount. In fact, blacks are 5.3 times more likely than white people to be imprisoned, right? 5.3 times more likely than whites to be imprisoned. So the incarceration rates of Maryland for black men is certainly, for blacks in general, in fact, is certainly the worst in America. And so she alleges that she claims that she was cooperating with federal agents in investigating Maryland's judges who were being bribed and facilitating the corrupt youth to prison pipeline in Maryland, and that's the reason why she was retaliated against. Now, I've read the cases against her, and they seem rather trivial, right? They seem rather trivial concerning the powers that judges have. The Maryland Commission on Judicial Disabilities, they didn't originally recommend her removal. What they recommended was that a 6-month suspension without pay. That was what they recommended, and that she should undergo some kind of training. Now, in the complaint, they allege that, well, she refused to take her training, right? Recommended training, mandatory training. She refused guidance from other judges. They claim that she was rude or combative to staff. That she called judges corrupt. I mean, and things. So those are the reasons why she was removed as a judge, not because she received bribes or did something really egregious, even though this Maryland Supreme Court said she demonstrated egregious misconduct. Now, egregious misconduct was, they said she showed bias towards criminal defendants, towards the defendants, because, and what the reason, the evidence they cited was her own campaign ad, right? Her own campaign ad for judge before she became a judge, in which she was saying that she referenced her being that she had been a victim of rape, that she'd been drugged and raped, and that she would fight for rape victims, as a judge. And so the investigative body that removed her alleged that she refused to recuse herself in a rape case. So, but it seems very extreme, very draconian, right? Very draconian, giving these evidence. And of course, she disputes these. She says, that she was basically railroaded and ganged up against, once she had filed a complaint, once she'd become a whistleblower, and she should have been protected, but that was not the case. But it's interesting, because I've watched some of her videos that she's done, and I've read a lot of her cases. I mean, I'm talking about cases she filed against the National Bar Association. She filed a case, I think, over a decade ago, when she was still an attorney before she became a judge. So what she alleged happened was that she went for a National Bar Association, that's NBA, event in uh, you know in Florida. I think this was maybe it was in Florida, when she was still an attorney. She was young, and during that event, she said that she was drugged, that her drink was spiked, and she blanked out. She blacked out. She had no recollection, no memory of whatever happened. And hours later, she woke up in the room of her rapist. And she did report this to the police, but basically, she was railroaded, um, and there was an obstruction. So she tried to pursue it, but and she subsequently sued the NBA. In fact, one of the people that she sued was Benjamin Crump, who and his partner Daryl Parks. So it's interesting. I've read the case. I want to try to keep these videos short, especially with respect to her case. I want to sort of be able to parse it out carefully. So you can see this is a judge who worked very hard, and she tried to be impartial and address, uh, you know, address the public corruption of judges, and she was basically retaliated against. So 250 years after, we're seeing that uh, justice, you know, does not seem to be does not appear to be impartial, and in any event, I'm going to analyze further in other cases. But before I finish this, I just want to talk about her background. Again, her last name, Ademiluyi, it interested me. She was born here in America, and she doesn't speak with a Nigerian accent at all, but she does acknowledge her Nigerian heritage. So Ademiluyi is a Yoruba name, and it's interesting because Ademiluyi is actually a name of a very popular, powerful, ancient Yoruba king. That was the Oni of Ife. So Oni of Ife is the most significant of all the Yoruba kings. There are many different Yoruba kings, right? There are many, many different Yoruba kings, many kingdoms, but of all of them, Oni of Ife is the most powerful. So, and there's an Ademiluyi royal house. That name interested me because I actually have friends who are, from the Ademiluyi, family household, and they are related to a former ancient King Ademiluyi, right? So I wonder if she's related to this late king. She probably is. It's not a most people who have that name are. So it might show why she's very courageous and she's undaunted in fighting against injustice. It's unfortunate. I was going to talk about her background. So she worked very hard. She has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from College Park, University of Maryland. They have a very strong engineering program, one of the strongest engineering programs in the nation, right? I have family who graduated from the engineering program in Maryland at College Park. So chemical engineering, and then she went on to law school at George Mason. So you can imagine many lawyers are not mathematically inclined, right? They normally the majority come from the humanities, right? But this is somebody who's very has strong mathematical abilities, and she went on to become a judge. So she worked very hard. I don't think she'll be making these making outlandish statements, right? If they weren't real, if they weren't true. It's unfortunate. I know of women who've told me they've experienced date rape, and they're normally afraid to tell because of the sort of blowback. They wouldn't be believed. Some might even be accused of being delusional. This judge, former judge Ademiluyi, was bold enough to come forward and talk about her experience, and it's unfortunate that she didn't get this sort of justice that she deserved, or even the national media didn't. They didn't raise the sort of storm, hell that they raised during the Me Too movement. But in any event, I will I'll do other videos and try and parse out her case. My name's Olurotimi Osha, and I will continue to just discuss how far we've come in the administration of justice after 250 years of our independence and the Declaration of Independence. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.